What's going on, guys? So we're gonna have to replace the battery in the camera because I always start my videos with a dead battery. But we've got ourselves another Silverado, and this one is pretty rough shape. So you see the fenders are pretty gnarly, but that's something that the fender flares hide quite nicely. So this truck probably looked like an amazing, beautiful little deal as long as those fender flares were on there, but as soon as you take them off, this is what you end up with. But we're not dealing with any of that. What we're actually dealing with, again, is the frame stuff. And let me show you a little bit of what we're dealing with here. As you can see, those are holes all through there, so that cross member is done. And then back here on the rear cross member, same thing, it is done. Trailer hitch cross member is done. This side is really done. So we're going to be replacing this cross member and that cross member, which also has a pretty decent crack all the way around it here. Starts, you know, underneath and runs almost all the way up. There's only about an inch left of material here before this thing's completely broken. So we're going to go ahead and do our usual, drop the fuel tank out. This one happens to be a Duramax. Not really any difference between the Duramax and the regular. But we're going to go ahead and drop the fuel tank out of it and then start unbolting and cutting all our rivets back here, which is going to be nice because this customer actually had the entire frame sandblasted before he brought it down here. So we don't have to do any descaling. We don't have to do any rust removal. We don't have to do any of that stuff because he already did it for us, which is amazing. So all of this stuff is going to cut super easy. Everything's going to come out super easy. And I'm probably jinxing the crap out of myself, but I think we can get this one done pretty quick. So what I'm going to do for the majority of it is I am actually going to time-lapse every bit of what I do on this truck. So there's going to be little bits and pieces where I add in, you know, some commentary and whatever. And but other than that, you guys are going to see a complete time-lapse of this job from start to finish. So here we go. Well, truthfully, I didn't think this one was going to be that bad, but we did get a decent amount of scale off the frame. So a lot of it came from inside of that cross member, inside this area here. So when we start putting this back together, we're going to actually treat the inside of the frame on both sides so that once we put that cross member in, we bolt everything down, we have paint where paint needs to be. But you saw, it is a little bit of a struggle to get these rivets out of here. I mean, the only real good, easy way to do it especially with the tight quarters of that one right down there that's behind the spring, is literally just a torch. So set up your torch, cut the rivets out, and then we can get to putting the new piece in. But I'm going to take a quick break, change the battery in this camera, and then we are going to, sorry about that crazy spin move, we are going to get back to putting that cross member in. We're going to shoot a coat of paint on this thing real quick, and then we'll be on our way to putting it back together. And there we go. We got the whole rear section done. Now, like I said in the previous video we did on the 2500 HD, is you have to make sure that you do this rear one first before you go cutting the front one out. Even though the front one is pretty damaged, I showed you guys in the last video how weak these frame rails are when there is no cross member. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to accidentally weld that cross member in with the frame rails out or in, because if they're pushed in, you'll never get this piece in. If they're pushed out, when you go to suck everything down, you're going to bend this frame rail completely. So you want to make sure that this cross member is in place before you go cutting anything else out or welding anything else in. If you guys are going to do this on your own, that is the pro tip. So what we're going to do now is the next step, which is this cross member that I told you guys about. Now, you can see the crack, but what you don't see is underneath, there's nothing left. I mean, it's literally gone. So, with it literally being gone, we're going to replace that one. And then this is the other one that's always of concern, and it does have a little bit of surface rust, but it has not broken through. So we are good with that cross member right here. So far, so good, guys. We're going to replace that cross member, and then you can see we did prime it up to about here with some self-etching primer, just to kind of, you know, protect our work that we just did. Tomorrow, we're going to knock out this one and then prime forward. We're going to spin the truck around, put it up on the lift once all this stuff is back in, the fuel tank's back in, and we are literally going to prime the rest of the frame, because the frame has been sandblasted all the way up front. So everything that was reachable was sandblasted. So even like the plow frame and all that other stuff has all been blasted. So we got to just shoot a coat of self-etching primer on there just to protect all the stuff that was sandblasted so that it doesn't get damaged. And the owner is actually going to put on a coat of probably Por 15 or something of that nature, just to protect everything again even further, which is going to be awesome. So he did buy this truck pretty cheap. He got an awesome deal on it, so it is worth putting this work into. And yeah, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, guys, so it's a new day. We got a fresh battery in the camera, and we have a Silverado that we're working on. Now, the next step on this project is we have to do this center cross member right here. Now, these are known to go with these things, and you've seen me do it in other videos, but they crack, they rot, especially right above the gas tank where everything tends to sit, especially in the Northeast here. So we're going to cut this exhaust hanger off because we're going to reuse that on the new piece. We're going to cut this out with the plasma cutter, and then we're going to run the new one in and weld everything up. So I will bring you guys back. We're going to time-lapse this one as well. This video is going to be heavily time-lapsed. I'm going to try something a little bit different, something a little new, see what it looks like, because you guys have seen so many of these in depth already. You know what, maybe it'll be neat to see, you know, the whole project basically start to finish with little excerpts in between. So here we go. And that is what we call done. So now, even though we had perfectly sandblasted metal, you'll notice that there's a lot of crap that still came out of the metal here. And that's just because, you know, all of this stuff that is in these little pockets of rust and whatever all comes back out to the surface. There's no way to get this super 100% clean, bright, shiny, you know, like that, unless you take a grinder to it and literally spend hours just grinding this down. So you're going to run into a little bit of porosity, a little bit of weird stuff. So in some places you just kind of got to go back over the weld and make sure that you got everything good. But we got everything welded in here, and now the last thing left is we're going to shoot some self-etching primer. Then we're going to put the fuel tank back in. Once the fuel tank is back in, we're going to flip this whole thing around, and we're going to literally just shoot the entire frame. We're going to shoot the rear diff. We're going to do all that with some self-etching primer, get it ready for paint. Customer's going to paint it, and it'll be good to go. So here we go. So here is the finished product. We'll start at the front and we'll show you all the way back. So we basically just shot a coat of self-etching primer on every area of the frame that was exposed. We didn't do the control arms or anything because I'm not sure what he's doing with that, but we went ahead and just basically sprayed the entire frame, front to back, underneath, all around. We did all the cross members, did the leaf springs. Of course, we did all the stuff that we did. And then we also finished up the axle. So now everything is in. Cross member is in. That one's good. We got this cross member in, all bolted down. We didn't put any of the bumper brackets back on or the hitch back on because the hitch is actually rotted. So he's probably going to go a different route with that. Put everything back together that way. But for right now, we'll just give him back the rotted hitch with the bolts and everything else that goes with it. So he's got all the hardware when he decides to put it back together. But other than that, guys, it is good to go. Now, I know I just did one of these a couple weeks ago, but I wanted to kind of get lens cleaned. I wanted to kind of get a little bit more in depth with the time lapse and kind of show you guys, you know, the time lapse that you're seeing is probably going to last all of about, I don't know, in total maybe 5 minutes. But the job actually takes, if you do it right and you take your time and you make sure everything is good, this job will take you about 2 days. If you have to take the bed off, it's going to take you a little bit longer. If you start breaking bolts, take a little bit longer. This one was nice in the fact that it was already sandblasted, so that helped huge. The sandblasting of the frame made welding it a little bit easier, but like I said in the video earlier, there's still some pockets. You know, you've got rust that has eaten into the metal, so you can see like this right here, for instance, where the metal is pockmarked. The rust still sits in there, and when it sits in there and you go to weld it, you still get some weirdness with the welds and everything else. But it was much easier with it already sandblasted, because then we didn't have to go and descale it and derust it and make a giant mess and all that other stuff. So it worked out well. But hope you guys enjoyed this video. It is the same for the Duramax trucks as it is for the gas trucks, so we can do both of them. But yeah, so we'll see on the next one. Not sure what that one's going to be yet. We got a couple more Jeeps coming. We got another Silverado 1500 sitting in the yard. We got my truck. We got a whole bunch of stuff to do, so let's just get to it. Have a great day, everybody.